current affairs.
Hello, and welcome to Dystopian Fiction Has Been Moved to Current Affairs. This is episode 42, and we will be talking about the really fantastic film from 2025, One Battle After Another, which was Marsha's suggestion, and I loved it. So,
Hell
a
yeah.
great choice.
Very
So,
much.
tell us what it's about then.
Okay, so One Battle After Another is Paul Thomas Anderson's newest film. As always, banging soundtrack, brilliant cinematography, all of those things. So go watch it for yourself before listening to this
Absolutely, yeah.
episode. But if you have already seen it, we'll do a little quick synopsis. So One Battle After Another, sort of as put by this quote from A. Dowd. We'll put all the relevant links and
Hmm.
articles in the description. An ex-revolutionary drawn back into his old life by a fascistic political and romantic rival. So we follow Leonardo DiCaprio as Bob, or as Pat, but
Yeah.
most of the
Or as Rocket Man, I think he gets
or as
called as
Rocket
well.
Man or Ghetto Pat. Okay, so Leonardo DiCaprio as Bob is ex-revolutionary from the group called the French 75, which is an activist group that targets migrant holding prisons on the Mexican border. And he's sort of part of a jolly brigade, including one woman called Perfidia Beverly Hills. And Perfidia is sort of the object of Bob's devotion, and he falls in love with her, and they have a relationship during the sort of group's glory days. In parallel, we also meet Colonel Stephen Lockjaw, who's the sort of high-strung, quite perverted, jarring
He's
individual.
creepy
Oh,
from the
he's so
start,
creepy.
isn't he?
Sean Penn
Yeah.
does like a really good, like it's
Uh,
the I think it's the lip quiver and the
oh
sort of
God,
like
yeah.
almost like
Oh, the hair.
Nazi style hair, kind of like I don't know what
Yeah.
even is going on there, but
Yeah.
yeah, he's like it's like his tights, he like his whole kind of demeanor is so like
Yeah. The way he
I don't know,
walks, it's that kind of like
uptight and yeah.
really
He kind
like,
of like waddles from side to side. It
yeah,
doesn't even feel
it
like
is.
his
It's
body
like,
really bends.
yeah.
Like all his muscles are tense. As I was like when I was reading about doing some research, lockjaw is the colloquial term for tetanus. So even exactly depicting his character, sort of like that tight, tense kind of
Mm.
guy. But yes, so him and Perfidia have this sort of secret behind the scenes relationship where he's got this sexual obsession with her, like fetishization of her. And they do this kind of whole song and dance where Lockjaw kind of coerces her into a sexual relationship, but then Perfidia is also on the other side, kind of like controlling him
Mm.
through this, I don't know, sexual union to like favor the activity of the French 75. But yes, after and then sort of some time passes. Also Perfidia has a baby. So we spend some time with her pregnant. There's some like really like fantastic scenes where she's like shooting an assault rifle with like 9 months pregnant. And after she has this baby, there's like I think sort of Bob almost like retires to devote himself to
Mm.
being a father. And Perfidia kind of continues along with her revolutionary action. And sort of a mishap happens at a bank robbery with the French 75, and Perfidia and some of her comrades are caught by the police. So Perfidia, taking advantage with her relationship with Lockjaw, sells out her comrades and is put into witness protection before she goes MIA across the Mexican
Mm.
border and she escapes. So she betrays the revolution. And
Which
go on, sorry.
nominative determinism would have told you she was going to do from the start. If your name is Perfidia, you were just always
Yes.
going to.
So perfidy, which is
Mhm.
like the derivative of her name, we found out means quality or state of being faithless or disloyal,
Right,
treachery.
yes.
Yeah, very interesting. I feel like everyone, even in like the Guardian articles, they were like interestingly named Perfidia, and it's like, me and Claire were saying it's quite a beautiful name once well,
Yeah.
before you find out
Well,
what
then,
it means.
chlamydia sounds like it could be a nice girl's name
That's
until you
true.
find out what it means.
Chlamydia. That is true. That is true. That is true. Um, yes, Bob and Perfidia's daughter Willa go into hiding for the next 16 years, and that's just the prologue, by the way. This is where the film really begins. And yeah, basically, Bob is retired revolutionary, living with his daughter, and then suddenly, the story kicks off when Colonel Lockjaw decides that he wants to join this club called the Christmas Adventurers Club. And whilst that sounds well jolly, it's actually a white supremacist group that maybe stand in for the, I guess, the white. Well, here we go. What was I saying? The white nationalist empire, the white nationalist
Yeah.
institution, sort of set up in the suburbs and is obsessed with this idea of purity and racial
Mm.
purity. So Lockjaw is now on a mission to erase any evidence of his union with Perfidia, a
Mhm.
black woman, and is therefore tracking down this potential daughter of his, as we do not know, to basically kill her. And then we kind of set off the French 75, get wind of this. Will is taken away by some of Bob's old comrades, and Bob has to try and find his daughter and reunite with her on this kind of crazy goose chase, and is kind of like on neck and neck in this race to find Willa
Yeah.
with his old rival, Colonel Lockjaw. And that is the setup of One
Indeed.
Battle After
Yeah.
Another.
Yeah. With the sort of proviso that is told to Willow, which is, she's like, "What about my dad?" And like, "Oh, don't worry about him. He trained for this." But in fact, he's like this old drunk stoner in a dressing gown.
Yeah,
He can't
yeah,
remember any of the code words that he's supposed to have like
yeah,
learned and eaten or whatever. So,
yeah. I feel like the whole film is just like satirizing. I think it's a fantastic. Everyone says that One Battle After Another is like a big kind of leftist wet revolutionary film, but I think it really plays into satirizing both sides of the
yeah, it
extreme, like
does.
of the extreme
Absolutely.
political
Yeah.
spectrum.
Yeah.
I don't think the members, all of the members of the French 75 are particularly painted as like these perfect, like revolutionary fighters, guerrilla
Mm.
fighters. Like they're actually pretty flawed. Like
Yeah.
especially Bob's character is kind of. I said he kind of looks like he's like a caricature of the right's depiction of the left, like sort
Yep.
of,
Yeah, I can see that.
stoner, disorganized, haphazard. Like one article's like he's like a cuckold, which is like a
Mm.
favorite slur of the right.
Mm.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
which I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah, and kind of like paranoid. Obviously, it's
Mm.
not paranoid if they really are watching you,
No, true. No, he's
but
right. Like
he is right.
he is right.
But even he is sort of like given up on his own sort of belief in it. His he has these rules about what his daughter can and can't do, but he doesn't really have any kind of, I think, actual belief that anything's going to happen, because when it does happen, he's like, "Oh my God, it's actually
He's
happening,"
like, oh shit, yeah.
and it's like, and I'm really high and I can't remember like anything. Um, yeah, no, I think that this is, I mean, in one of the things I suppose that makes me think that both it makes it very successful as a comedy, but also I think makes it something that is very different from kind of like a piece of righteous indignation against kind of an authoritarian state and a call to revolutionary violence or anything like that, is the fact that everyone is so extreme to the extent of being, the white supremacists are clearly, evil and corrupt and so on, but they're also comically evil, and their cabal is, as we said, it's like the Christmas adventurers, and they say hail Saint Nick when they, as
Hail
their kind
Saint
of like
Nick. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
greeting. And then by contrast, like the left have these extremely long password and countersign and so on that no one can
The
remember,
revolutionary
and
bureaucracy.
that's all right, exactly. And if I suppose if we look at our kind of like left wing heroes or whatever, well, Perfidia rats on her colleagues and abandons her family. And
Ideologies as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And Bob kind of becomes more small c conservative as well as becoming just generally like useless to the world, and like fed up with the like next generation and the like the youth, and he has to be like reminded of his of Willa's friends' pronouns, and um oh, when he's on the phone, and he's like screaming at the guy who wants the password, and the guy on the phone is like, I feel like you're getting in my space now, and you're, becoming aggressive, and these things, which is all true. And but Bob's like, what
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
revolutionary are you if you're getting upset and
yeah.
being shouted at on the phone? So, there's nobody is perfect. And Willa ultimately basically saves herself rather than
Yeah.
being saved. Do I think there's a message? Do I think that there's a clear kind of like sympathy for the left and so on? Yes, I do, but I don't think that it's a clear cut kind of,
Mm.
it's an anti-authoritarian film, but it doesn't
Yeah, yeah.
celebrate one
Well,
side or the other.
this is kind of, I
Uh,
feel like, also the argument to say that it's not necessarily like glorifying the
mm,
extreme left, because
mm,
the world of one battle after another is set in like an authoritarian, like an authoritarian America, which is kind of what we're living through right
yeah.
now. But it's not necessarily like these people aren't like the extreme left. They're just like freedom fighters trying to
Mm.
like fight for a better
What are they
world.
fighting for? I mean, one of the sort of, I suppose critiques from the left has been that the French 75, well, they don't like immigration detention camps. Yeah, good. And of course, this film has been extremely timely in terms of recognizing
Yeah.
the
What's kind of going
despicable
on right
behavior of
now.
ICE and
Yeah.
so on. Exactly.
It's for the
Um,
Mankind United. I guess is the stand in for ICE in the
yes,
film.
exactly. Yeah.
Um,
But in other ways, I mean, Perfidia talks about abortion law and protecting women's bodies. So again, very timely over the last 2 years, I suppose, as we've seen women's rights eroded in the States. So that's definitely kind of part of it. And there's generally a kind of things about freedom and so on, but it's not very specific. It's particularly obviously looks at Black Power, although again it carefully doesn't mention like Black Lives Matter or anything like that. It's one of those films that when we came to it first of all, I was thinking, is it right for two white people to kind of discuss this film? And then I thought, well,
mm,
hang on, it's written and directed by a white man, and
yeah,
it's
and it kind of
based.
centers like the two de facto main characters of Bob and kind of Lockjaw.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that it's well, tell us if you feel differently, but I think it is appropriate because I think it does center itself on kind of assessing whiteness, and white privilege, and white supremacy and so on, but not in a way I think that necessarily the kind of like the depiction of Black Power as it's sort of named in the film, like when Jungle Pussy is up on the bank desk and sort of saying,
Mm,
this is what Black Power looks like. That's then undermined by what Perfidia does, kind of in the name of
when
that
she,
Black Power,
yeah, it's
shooting the
like
security
shoots the
guard,
black
and
man, yeah,
yeah,
who's, yeah,
exactly,
the security
yeah,
guard. Yeah.
um,
And I think obviously like we encourage, don't let this be your only commentary on
yeah,
a film
exactly.
that's like a big theme of it is like black power and race. We're obviously not like whilst it's like we're not necessarily the most qualified, but I think it's important to still have discussions. But like don't
Yeah,
let that discussion just be from the white voice. So
yeah, exactly.
diversify your I don't know,
Yeah,
your
yeah,
um
exactly. Give space to Black
consumption.
voices, and
Yes.
listen to Black creators as well on this
Yeah.
film. So yeah, I mean, as I said, it's kind of like it clearly. One of the things that happens is that the French 75 fail. I mean, that's what we're kind of told as
Mm,
well. So there's that. I think that there was quite a. Obviously, it came out at the same sort of time as the murder of Charlie Kirk. So there was quite a lot of right wing critique that said, this film shouldn't be released at this time because it's going to encourage political violence from the left and so on, which I feel is a very shallow interpretation of the film because
Yeah.
it ultimately doesn't celebrate
So it doesn't say
violent
that they're
action.
successful at all. Like
No.
even so the French 75, a lot of people think are a stand-in for the Weather Underground, which was a
Okay.
Marxist militant organization active in 1969. So PTA, Paul Thomas Anderson, also has quite a, I guess, artistic relationship with this author who wrote
Thomas
Thomas
Pynchon. Yeah.
Thomas Pynchon.
Yeah.
So he adapted Thomas Pynchon's book
Mm.
Inherent Vice into a film, and this is also loosely based on Pynchon's book called
Vineland.
Vineland. There we go. I
See,
knew
we
that
finish
was
each
going to
other's
come in.
sentences now. It's
This is
so
the
much
perfect
symbiosis
duo.
here.
Yeah, literally. Um, which is like also set technically in the sort of like hippiedom and the sort of like, and then obviously
And like
16 years
Reaganism,
later of the
isn't it? Yeah.
70s. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but like PTA brings it into the modern. But
Mm.
yeah, anyway, so sort of meant to be based on the Weather Underground, and sort of the group's political goal was to create a revolutionary party to overthrow the United States government, who they believed to be imperialists, and it was characterized by their positions on Black Power and opposition to Vietnam War, according to
Mhm.
Wikipedia. But yeah, so that's kind of like very much in line. But ultimately, that group failed, and their
Yeah.
like biggest achievement was like blowing up some building that killed like three of their own members. So yeah, I know.
Yeah. It's interesting, I think, that, on the one hand, like Bob Pat was this kind of like bomb maker, and that's
Mm,
that's why the argument for why, Lockjaw says, he needs to track him down. It's so important. But he's actually like depicted as fairly peripheral when he comes running up to the group with his little trolley at the start, and you think like, who is this guy? No one
well,
really tells
also,
him kind of like what's going on or
all he
anything.
really does is like set off some fireworks as like a
Fireworks, yeah.
diversion. Like
Yeah.
his role in the operations is actually quite minimal.
This is true, yeah. And, when obviously they do set bombs, but we also learn that they are setting bombs with bomb warnings given, and Perfidious phones up, gives bomb warnings that they set them off after hours. So the intention is destruction of property rather than injuring people. The biggest bomb he sets off is to blow the power to the
Yes.
city, I think. So, he's not a bomb maker in the sense of mass murder or anything like that. In fact, the first person we see die as a result of their actions is Perfidia's shooting of the bank security guy. So yeah, I mean, in that sense, you could say that the it's a violent revolution, but not one that intends to cause, I suppose, unnecessary death
Death.
until
Yeah.
Perfidia takes it too far. And you can see the shock, like among her comrades when
Yeah.
she does that. Do you think that Perfidia is depicted as really believing in her cause? Because that's one of the things I think that is I was
So
left wondering about.
I feel like one of the central themes of the film as well is about how like the battle, the fight is like inherited across generations. So it's
Mm,
kind of like Perfidia's mum says to Bob, like, you're no good for my
mm,
daughter. Like she
mm,
comes from a very long line of like revolutionary
mm,
activists, and you look like you're a bit lost. Oh, poor Bob. And like, and obviously the way that Willa kind of inherits her parents' war and is
mm,
like basically kind of everything that her parents kind of fought for comes to affect her in
mm,
down the line in the future. And that kind of also comes back to Perfidia as well, as like she kind of inherited this war from her like
mm.
family, and like whether that's like something she's 100% committed to. And
Yeah.
as we see in the end, she's happy to, not happy, but she sells out the
Mm,
her comrades
mm.
ultimately for her own self-preservation.
Yeah, presumably with a good sense that they are not going to be arrested and given due trial. I mean, she's not depicted as
I mean,
naive.
yeah. No, I mean
So,
those we see in the sequence after that, but they literally just snipe them. Like these people aren't
yeah,
caught and taken to trial; they just
no.
like get shot. Like
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
killed.
Yeah.
They're murdered.
Yeah. It has very wide-reaching consequences what she does. And I just wondered
Mm,
about some of the parallelisms between her sort of sexual desire and the presence of violence. I mean, she says herself, pussy isn't for fun, that guns are the fun
hmm
bit. And she, as you mentioned, sort of reverses the hypersexualization and the sort of fetishization of her by the white men in her life to use it as a kind of form of power in return. But
mm.
she also seems to become sort of aroused by the acts of violence that they perform as well. She wants to have sex when they're busy blowing up
Yeah, blowing stuff up. Yeah.
the pylons.
Um.
And poor Bob is trying to demonstrate how to safely put the bomb, like use a
Yeah.
shunt to the
Yeah.
cap
Yeah.
and things like that.
Yeah. 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 It's kind of like
So,
this kind of like overlap of kind of sex and
mm.
violence and like weaponry. Yeah.
It just makes it seem like the thing that matters is, as it were, the chance to run around with guns more than it is the cause for which they are
Yeah.
fighting.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
loses
Yeah. For
that, she
sure.
loses the kind of dedication to the cause.
Yeah,
Um,
it's almost like she has a lust for the thrill rather than for the
mm,
cause.
mm.
And again, it's kind of like that. Like, I just love that image of her being 9 months pregnant, like with
Yeah, that's
like a
very
like a this
dramatic, isn't
crazy
it? Yeah,
rifle
yeah,
in
yeah.
her hand. Like, I don't know, she kind of lives for the and like ultimately it also when she has her baby
Mm,
and for Bob, he almost kind of retires himself to
mm,
become a father and dedicate himself to the family and he says to her like look we're a family now like this is what matters and she's still kind of I don't know I there's also like she has her internal kind of monologue in the film that she's
mm.
almost jealous of her daughter and that's almost feels like the reason that she goes back to the field and
Yeah.
goes back to like being a part of these like military operations rather
Mm,
than thinking that this is like the cause is ultimately the thing to die
mm.
for. It's like again down to her kind of like distracting herself from her like own jealousy of her baby. And she says
Yeah,
it's like weird to be jealous of her baby.
yeah.
Um
I saw a bit of a quotation from an interview that Teyana Taylor did about
mm,
a character as Perfidia and basically saying, on the one hand, she's sort of justifying the way in which kind of Perfidia turns on its head the fact that people might be like white men might be aroused by a strong black woman, but also the idea that Perfidia is kind of left to survive her own feelings over her daughter and the complexity of that, including this idea of jealousy, perhaps a depiction of postpartum depression. And
mm,
basically, Taylor said, it will never be a moment of judgment because a lot of her mistakes have come from her being in survival mode dealing with postpartum depression and the title of being a
mm,
strong woman, a strong black woman. We don't get the same amount of compassion as everybody else. We don't get the same
mm.
amount of grace as everybody else. Everybody just assumes we're okay. To me, that felt like quite maybe almost sort of too forgiving of what Perfidia does, but at the same time,
I think
perhaps
it's
then
the
I'm
extent
just
to which you
playing into
yeah, you
sort of
grant that as a because
yeah,
I think in the case of her I think in that initial way, kind of like not abandoning her daughter, but
mm,
kind of going back out into the field after like just directly having her baby,
mm.
that could be extended, but then to sell out the rest of your
Yeah,
basically
that
inadvertently cause the murder of your
yeah,
like extended activist group, I think.
I know,
Yeah, I don't know. It might be
and
a bit
it's
of a
not,
stretch.
there's plenty of narratives. And, I don't want to sort of dictate what anybody's experience of motherhood should be, but there's plenty of
Mm,
narratives that we might sympathize around um, sympathize with around the idea of kind of somebody deciding that their own baby is more important to them than anyone else, but she doesn't do it for
She
her
decides she is
baby.
more important than
Yeah,
anyone else. Yeah,
yeah.
including her
Um,
baby.
yeah. And on I suppose the flip side of that, there's always sort of arguments that are saying, that I guess if you truly believe in a cause, then it will be bigger than any single person, including your own child. But I
Mm,
guess we also kind of react against that because it feels a bit kind of counter instinctual, in
yeah.
terms of sort of
Well, I
familial
guess that's
love.
what we can question with like Bob's actions
Mm,
is like when Bob becomes a father, his priorities shift from
mm,
the French 75 to caring for his daughter. And it's kind of like,
mm.
is that right that he's kind of giving up the larger fight for a brighter future for everyone over
Yeah,
like the personal I guess like like his daughter, like his future, his like personal
mm,
future, and his daughter's like his direct next of kin's future.
yeah.
I guess there's also kind of this
Especially in the
like a
way
question.
that, at the end when Willa gets the letter from her mother, and
Mm,
it's all full of sort of like, oh, we lost the fight, but you can go on and you'll win the fight and it'll be fine.
yeah,
The idea of sort of
maybe
saying,
you're the one who'll put the world
yeah,
right.
yeah, we fucked it all up, but it's okay because off you go. You can do it instead of us. And Willa does say at one point, like she didn't want to be born into this. And this is always the question, isn't it? Every time we put something onto the next generation who didn't,
Sign up for any of it,
sign
yeah.
up for any of it or contribute to it or whatever. I have a lot of sympathy with people who say they wouldn't want to have children to be born into the world as it is. So,
Mm,
if you really believe that it is so terrible and that you've got a battle to win, why would you bring a child into the middle of that battle? And I think that, the people around Perfidia, what's the name of the woman who saves Willa? Is it Deandra? Something like that. The one who's sort of still fighting even after it all. Anyway, she obviously like has real kind of concern about the fact that Perfidia hasn't really thought through the nature of having a baby and maintaining kind of the life that
mm,
she has had before. But I suppose we also don't know what she's been doing in all of this time. Maybe she's fighting the fight in another way, but we certainly
yeah,
don't
yeah.
we don't hear that. And Bob, I don't know what he's been doing to be perfectly honest. I mean, he's obviously successfully raised his daughter, well as this
Yeah,
great
yeah.
kid, but most of the time he talks about a band, I think, that he was in,
Yes,
obviously, the
yes.
old band and things like that.
Yep, yep, yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, it's funny because I think even Willa says like she kind of feels like she's the one raising Bob, like
yeah,
it being the
yeah,
other way around.
yeah,
And it's even like when, for example, when they gain their new identities,
mm,
from before they were
mm,
Charlene and Pat, and now they're Willa and Bob, as when they're presented these identities as said, mother and son, Will and Bob Ferguson, a mother and son who died in childbirth. So it's sort of like their roles are like the
mm.
parental and child identities are reversed.
Oh, good spot,
Um,
yeah. I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio, I have to say, whatever qualms one might have about his personal life choices and things like that, he is a very, very good actor, and
he's
has
fantastic and he
he
does
has
smash it. Like it's
yeah,
so funny. He's so funny.
he has no qualms about being the kind of like really embarrassing character. Like the way that he
Yeah.
talks, like tries to talk to the youth in the way that he like sort of, my dude and things like that. And it's just like, oh no, like just so embarrassing. Also, the way in which, and this is always, I suppose, it's sort of like a bit of a kind of dig at sort of wokedom, where he's like, talking to the teacher about like the different history that's taught and sort of sounding like all knowledgeable about, the different presidents, and talks about Benjamin Franklin being a slave owner, and then she's like, "You can't vape in here,"
You
and he's
can't
like,
vape in it. Yes.
and he's like, "Slavery continuing." It's like this is like that's in any way the same thing. It's just we see the same thing actually with his kind of like white privilege coming out when he tells the sensei that he's like so sorry that he's brought all this chaos to his door, and the sensei is like, housing all of these
Like migrants, yeah.
migrants and like Mexican asylum seekers and things like that are all in his sort
Yeah.
of
And his
house.
basement
And
or whatever, yeah, or
exactly,
his the
yeah.
loft. I
And
don't
it's
know where
like,
they are.
we've been besieged for like hundreds of years, and you think that your problem is like,
This is your
yeah,
problem,
yeah,
yeah. It's so funny,
yeah,
as well, like Bob's character, like freaking out, like moving through this massive apartment as the sensei's like being introducing him to like every
so
single
fucking good.
child and like
Yeah.
on or whatever.
The way in which that like they just go through door after door after door, it's like
Yeah,
more and
yeah,
more
yeah.
of it. It's so good. I also really liked the scene where, and this is where I mean, I do feel like, I feel like Bob in a way, like when he has to like escape over the rooftops and he's with the like gang of skateboarders, and then
Yeah,
he
yeah.
like
He's
that
like,
he's like,
like
yeah,
onto
exactly,
the
yeah,
ledge, yeah.
yeah, and they're all silhouetted doing these like great cool leaps and things like that, and then
Parkour, yeah.
yeah, and then he falls off the roof. I'm just like,
Oh,
that
oh
would
my
be me.
God, yeah, insane, insane. And he's still in the dressing gown. It's just
Still in
so
the dress
funny.
again, stands up. We think, oh, good, he's okay, and then,
Yeah,
then he
yeah. And
gets
then he just
tased.
instantly gets tasered. Yeah, like so good.
Oh,
So good. Proper like a
um,
bit of a slapstick kind of
oh
character.
yeah, it is.
Um,
That said, that also leads us to some really good, I think, acts of kind of like where we see, I suppose, allyship and support in the kind of like anti-police and anti-authoritarian stands can be small things that make a difference. So there's, for
mm,
example, getting him to tell them that he is diabetic, for example. Whereas, he's giving a very good impression, I think, of somebody going into a diabetic coma when he's actually just, like high and drunk and fallen off a roof. And then being told to go out the back door or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
Even down to being flung unceremoniously from the window of the sensei's car because he's too scared to jump. These are little things that just push
Yeah.
Bob in the right direction to doing, the good things that he still hopes to do. We can all do those things, like turn a blind eye to actions that we know may well be criminal, but are right, if you see what I mean.
Mhm.
Um, and stand up against institutions like ICE and so on, although that does not come without severe risk, obviously. Okay, so we talked about Perfidia quite a bit. We've talked about Bob. What about
Mhm.
Lockjaw then?
Lockjaw, well, I feel like Lockjaw's like you can't. I feel like you can't talk about Lockjaw without also bringing in comparisons to video because they're meant to be like these like two
Mm,
contrasting. They're kind of meant to be like two sides of the same coin, I'd say
yeah.
in some senses. So I don't know. I think the union of the sort of sexual relationship between
Mm,
Perfidia and Lockjaw is almost like what sets up the whole central plot of the film
mm,
and like Lockjaw's mission to eliminate the traces of this
mm,
relationship. So Lockjaw is again this kind of like, as we described him, uptight, white supremacist, kind of quite militant character.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because he wants to join a society of white
Mhm.
supremacists, the ultimate kind of boys' club. He takes on these kind of roles that are, he's only a captain at the start when he's overseeing the immigration detention center.
Mm.
Um, but eventually, like through his basically killing everybody that Perfidia names, he becomes a colonel.
Mhm.
Ultimately, he rises up the ranks and is sort of celebrated and things like that. But I don't know, he's such a sort of weak little man. I mean, little, I think, being one of, the sort of Napoleon complex or whatever we used to call it. He wears his lifts in his shoes, and he
Mm.
um is very tight t-shirt, and he's militantly anti-gay, and of course he becomes militantly anti-black because he's attracted to black women. And yes, he objectifies Perfidia and other black women.
Mm.
But I don't think that's necessarily to say that it's because he sees I don't know. He's clearly somebody who is a sub who wants to be a dom. And that I think is like the
Yeah.
big clash for him. He wants to be the
Yes.
big man, and he associates that with ultimately white supremacy and being
And
accepted on
the
this kind of like
into
level
the
or
boys'
whatever.
club, Christmas
Yeah.
adventure, and he kind of
But
grapples with his like identity as like a white heterosexual man. He's like
yeah.
attracted to, and with his like libido and sexual attraction to perfidia. And black women, like
Mm,
even the way he says he's like, I love black women in the
yeah.
film, like
Yeah.
I don't know, it's all very, yeah.
And the fact that he reacts to like right at the beginning, the sort of this, I guess the tone of the film is very much set by the kind of
Mm,
get up scene, as it were, when Perfidia is pointing a gun at him, and his
mm,
reaction is to become sexually aroused, and she encourages him in that, obviously. But
mm. Yeah, maybe there's
yeah,
also like a bit of commentary about how sexual desires can, I don't know, like potentially derail, like, I don't know,
mm,
people's, I guess, vision and strive for like their goals. I don't know, if there's like something in there, like
yeah,
that in there about the film, because obviously like Lockjaw throws, you know, military operate, like he, finds out plots about what the French 75 is
mm,
doing, and he keeps his
mm,
mouth shut in order to be
yeah,
able to be in bed with Perfidia. And Perfidia obviously uses her relationship with Lockjaw to her advantage in the
mm.
end to get out of I guess years in prison.
Yeah. There's an interesting thing to what you were saying about this idea of kind of men. It's not exclusively men, but I think we see this as a trope with that, like men who are undermined in their kind of uh, by their dicks, basically. They are completely,
Yeah.
led by sexual desire to compromise themselves in other way. The irony,
Yeah.
I think, of watching this in the light of things at the moment is the idea that there would be consequences for men about any sexual liaison that they had had, because the simple fact of everything that is going on at the moment with regard to the Epstein
The
files and
Epstein
everything that
files.
exactly, these are we're seeing the fact that the
There are no
consequences are
consequences.
basically nil, even in the case
Yeah.
of coercive sex and rape of children. And perhaps it's because it's not portrayed as about sex as such as it is about race. Um,
Mm.
I don't know, because in other ways, the sort of white supremacist sort of group seem, so the employment of people of color, for example, and the presumably exploitation of people of color is something that is considered kind of de rigueur and normal in their practices. So you would think that in certain circumstances, it would be acceptable to sexually exploit people of color as well.
Yeah.
But that seems to be it. The problem is what that he was attracted to her, or
And
is
so I
attracted
don't know,
to
because I think
black
ultimately it's
women.
like he just needs to get. I don't know. I don't actually know that is true, because mainly it's like he wants to get rid of. It's like because it's like, for example, they talk about a hitman, the Christmas
Yeah.
Adventures Club. They meet in some basement, and
Mm.
very nice basement, and they talk about this hitman who is like impure, and that he's
Yeah.
like, I don't know, he's like, I don't know if he's Mexican or so, or like
They say that
just
it's
somewhere
okay
South
because he
America. I can't
passes
remember.
as he passes
Why? But he
as
still can't be a
partially
part of the.
Mexican, but he's actually an indigenous American, and that's their problem with him. It's strange that I haven't seen any commentary on it specifically, but I did mean to look because I suppose it's sort of saying that there's some type of brown that is better than other types of brown in the eyes of the white supremacists.
Yeah.
They
Mm.
also are anti-Semitic because he was asked about whether he's a Gentile.
Well, it's also
Um,
it's true of when they ask of like they say that Lockjaw has a mixed child. They say what sort of mix, and they
oh, that's
go,
right.
they
Yeah,
like hesitate, and they go, black. So
Yeah.
there is clearly like some sort of
Of
hierarchy that they have of
yeah.
the races
Yeah.
anyway. But I also wanted to mention that I think it goes both ways with the obviously we got the kind of I guess like how men can control their libido and
Mm.
their sexual desires and how that can cause I guess trouble to their goals or whatever. But at the same time I think Perfidio's intimacies with
Mm.
Lockjaw are sort of a manifestation of her
Mm.
ideological desire and her like want to like control and beat down on like the maybe like white supremacist institution because obviously she's like the like almost they've got a bit she's like a bit of a dominatrix in their
Yeah.
relationship
Mm.
and like in the it's they're shown in the bedroom she's got like a gun to his
Yeah.
head and she kind of straddles him and stuff like that so I think there's also like to not totally discredit all men I
Mm.
think I'm sure there's kind of like kind of goes the same for women or female people as
Mm.
well so
Yeah, no, I
yeah
think that that's an interesting one, and I suppose that when we think about the sexualization of women
mm,
by men, then there's sort of the various potential responses to reclaim power within that. One of them is arguably to accept the fact that it happens and then exploit it to one's advantage.
mm,
Now,
mm,
this then tends to be turned on women in terms of like sleeping your way to the top and things like that. It's sort of that women's sexual agency is somehow manipulative. um,
mm,
you know, but obviously that's sort of, one sort of thing saying actually it can give women power over men, um, to exploit it in their own favor. And then obviously the kind of other extreme to that is to say, well, you either accept that not all men objectify women and it is possible to have relationship with men within the patriarchy, if everybody does the work or so on, or it's to sort of say that there can never be an equal relationship between men and women whilst the patriarchal structure of society remains, that's essentially an impossible goal because of the way in which women are objectified. And so either that kind of like results in some societies has resulted in kind of women, we talked about this before, women like rejecting any sex with men, for example. In other
mm-hmm.
senses it's moved perhaps towards different kinds of relationship or different understandings of gender and sexuality. But I don't know, I felt that Bob is in a way as much he's kind of the another sort of lockjaw to Perfidia in a way, insofar as she maintains control over their relationship and the way that she speaks
mm,
to him and so on, until the point at which he basically stands up to her, and that is only in defense of their daughter. So,
yeah
um, but she uses a kind of like a tool to like a weapon against him because she's sort of saying, you're trying to control what I do, and maybe he is. We could say that
mm.
ultimately she is fully within her rights to go out and rob banks. She should be able to hold down her career as a bank robber
yeah
and be a
exactly
mother. The problem is where she doesn't, you know, but her
yes
child is cared for and so on. So yeah, it's
yeah
a tricky one. But maybe don't murder people while you're at it. That's probably a
yeah
good plan. Lockjaw, obviously, ultimately, you're right, he can't cope. When he meets Willa, do you think he can't cope with the fact that he has a daughter, a mixed race daughter? Or do you think that he can't cope with the fact that people are going to find out this and he is not going to be able to become part of the big boys
Ooh.
playgroup?
Surely it's a bit of both, I think.
Mm.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like if you had a sort of I mean, did he know the whole time that he had a daughter? I guess that's the question as well, is like how it's
We're
unclear,
told
like
that
oh no, he does know
Jungle
because he
Jungle Jungle Pussy
Pussy,
had said, I think,
yes.
before being
In a
killed.
but he did go up to when Bob had just had the baby and was in the shop buying
Oh
like
yeah,
baby
that's
formula or
right.
whatever. He did
Yeah.
come up and say, "Oh, you got you have a child, like what's the gender,
Oh, that's
what's
right.
the
Yeah, yeah,
name, sounds like a black girl's name,
yeah,
sort of like some
yeah,
weird like Freudian-esque.
yeah.
I don't know what he was talking about, but it was a bit weird.
No, it was very weird because then he went straight on to saying that, he's attracted to black women and so on. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just, yeah. I mean, he also obviously has a very screwed up idea around love because he uses like words around love per video on a number of occasions. And he
Mm,
even plays like this sort of like traditional courting gentleman. He turns up
yeah.
with the flowers, and then when she
Flowers.
doesn't answer, he gets the battering ram and
Yeah,
breaks
I
the
love
door
he's
down.
like
It's
he's
like,
literally just in the back seat waiting. Like that was the
um,
plan B all along. Yeah, kind of insane.
um, and the other thing I suppose is a little bit surprising and kind of my question was, I appreciate that there are plenty of reasons why somebody might accidentally get pregnant, but I'm very
Why keep it?
surprised that, yeah, that not only did Perfidia allow herself to get pregnant when, especially if she was having sex with Lockjaw, whose child she surely wouldn't have wanted to have,
Yeah.
and then keep it when presumably she
That's
knew
the kind
that
of
it was
lifestyle that she has.
him.
It's kind of like not
Yeah.
ideal to have a baby.
No, and it could
Potentially
be the
say
baby of your
your
enemy.
weird fetishizing,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, um,
policeman. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, interesting.
Um, and of course, it also raises some really good questions about kind of what it is to be a father and so on. Bob ultimately
Mm.
is maybe not the greatest of fathers, but he does, do the right things in the end.
Mm. I love how Willow as well, without hesitation, like says, it doesn't matter what the paternity test says, like I have a
Yeah,
father, I
yeah,
already have a dad, and he's
yeah,
whatever much better than you. I
mm,
can't remember what the exact
yeah,
quote was, but that was never a kind of,
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know. Like I think there was never a question of who the father character to her
Mm,
was, or she never had to question it. Um,
mm. I wondered whether I mean, Willow obviously handles the whole kind of situation from the point of being, picked up at the party to having to shoot the Christmas adventurer guy. Um, she handles all of that, really well. She's a fighter throughout, and she remains calm, and she, doesn't, I guess, react to in the way that her captors want at various times. Or, as you say, she doesn't kind of like acquiesce to what Lockjaw says about paternity. And there was part of me that was thinking, well, this is about the fact that, Bob has brought her up. She clearly has remembered the sort of pass phrases and things like that she's supposed to know. But is there also something here about the fact that not just that the child of revolutionaries would have to learn to be in the world in a certain way, but also that young women and young black women in particular are forced to be in the world in a certain way because of the fact that they are always the potential subject of object of violence.
mm.
And that was a bit depressing as a thought. Um, or maybe she's supposed to parallel her mother, because obviously we do see the parallel scenes with the machine guns and so on.
Yes,
Um,
yeah.
what was with the nuns?
The ones that grow weed.
Yeah, exactly.
It's what was it? What did Lockjaw say? He was like, is that some sort of crazy assault on God's will or something like that?
Yeah,
I can't remember
exactly. Yeah.
what he says, but
It's
um
oh, what are they? What's their order called? It's got something to do with beavers. Anyway, so
Brave
that's got
Beavers, the Order of the
yeah,
Sisters Order of the Brave People or something
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
So excellent stuff. I mean, fighting nuns, always keen on fighting nuns,
Mm.
stoned fighting nuns. This is good.
Stoned fighting
Uh,
nuns.
though it also, again, there's a whole kind of line of, I guess, historical ways of looking at convents and places where religious women could gather because it was the only place within society where they could live and have power as women, was basically to opt out of the system of the patriarchy and put themselves
Mm.
into a religious system, which was the only place within reason that
Yeah.
they were able to have autonomy both over their own bodies, over their own um, their money or the money of the convent at any rate, and things like that. So there's a little bit of a nice kind of parallel there. Though they've just kind of like given up on fighting, I think, as well.
Mm.
So though they still have lots of like a complete armory, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, so ultimately, is it a hopeful end to the film?
Um, I mean, I think in a sense, it is kind of depicts Willa as the next generation taking over the fight
Mm,
and kind of continuing on the war that her parents started. I don't know if that's necessarily the like right thing, or it's particularly good that she's had to
mm,
basically take the weight of the world on her
mm,
shoulders that her parents left behind for her. But I think in some senses that is kind of hopeful, and obviously in a nice way, Bob and Willow got reunited and they're kind
mhm.
of back to living their life together. I don't know how do you feel like Perfidia's letter as well kind of like sits in that equation? Would you say her letter is a sort of like sign of hope, or particularly a positive thing to receive?
I think that it was a bit platitudinous. It felt like
Mm.
it. I thought in a way it was good that there was no, for me anyway, there was no sense that Willa went and took up the fight that had been her parents' fight because of the letter or because of her father. She did it because of her own lived experience and political choices.
Mm.
Um, After all, I mean, Bob is, again, bless him, lying on the sofa trying to learn how to take a selfie um, while she's going off to do a 3.5 hour drive to join a counter protest. This is her political action. It's not one that she merely inherited. And I don't think that she was inspired per se by the letter. The letter just kind of acknowledged the failure of her parents and the previous generation. I suppose the thing that it felt very real and felt very depressing was the fact that the consequences for everything that happened really land only on certain individuals. I mean,
Yeah.
um,
Like Perfidia didn't have to suffer any of what went down during
no.
the
So basically,
duration of the film.
there's the other members of the French 75 who were killed or whatever, and there's the impact obviously like on Bob and on Willa and on the people who help them, even down to like Willa's friends, who are put in this terrible interrogation situation even though they're just children.
Mm.
And then obviously there's on the other side of things, there's other people who die. So there's the Christmas adventurers guy, who Willa kills, and then Lockjaw gets into the boys' club and is gassed in his own office.
Yes.
But that is just their Christmas adventurers cleaning house, and then they're going to install somebody else. The
Yeah,
structure,
yeah.
the institution
It's like
remains. There,
ultimately, yeah, the institution remains, and after all of that, like after all of Lockshaw's effort to basically like willingly be a part, like just a
yeah,
cog in the big white
yeah,
supremacist machine, like he's
yeah,
just the higher powers above him
yeah.
are just like, yeah,
You know, and in a way, he
ultimately
dies.
decided
He
to,
dies happy.
yeah,
He
maybe
even though
that is a
he
hopeful end.
Yeah, I mean, he must know that they were the very people who tried to kill him, surely. I mean, or maybe he
Mm.
didn't. Maybe he thought it was the French 75. But I don't know. It's just this, I suppose, this problem always with, I have this real belief in grassroots movement and in the power of community and in standing up to institutions. But more often than not, the institutions are too powerful and the French 75 fail and Bob and all the people helping him fail. I mean, they rescue Willa, but at what cost? And so really Willa rescues herself. I mean, it's just like, one battle after another. is
One
very
battle
much the
after
metal
another,
message of the film, after another,
loss
and
after
on and
loss,
on and
yeah,
on,
and on and
you
on.
know,
Yeah.
um, which perhaps is metaphorically shown by the car chase, the longest car chase of like any film ever. Just is worth it. I think in some ways the film is worth watching for that and for
For sure.
the soundtrack,
The
especially at the beginning.
soundtrack.
Intense. The soundtrack is like the opposite of what you want to put on for relaxing kind of wrestling. It's like,
A bit Steely Dan,
yeah, true,
Dirty
true.
Work, bit of Steely
Yeah.
Dan's Dirty Work, or
There's
Swings and
some very,
Roundabouts.
very intense minimalist stuff at the beginning that like
Mm.
really puts you on the edge of your seat.
I
But
thought the bits as well, like soundtracking when Bob goes on the run himself, is like it sort of starts off as this like really composed, very like beautifully put together like jazz, and then when it like cuts to him like running around, it's all like discordant, a bit like
yeah,
more free. It's a very well put together film. I think I don't know
there's
if this one's also Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead, but he usually soundtracks a
uh
lot of the PTA films. So yes. It's
well
definitely
there you
one to
go.
go watch if we
It
haven't
is.
convinced you already.
Yeah. So yeah, so if really dark kind of comedy
Mm.
is your thing, although there's there's a little bit of farce, a little bit
It
of
is it's fun. It is fun,
it
I'd
is
say.
fun. Yeah, a good choice. Thank you, Marsha. I enjoyed it very
No
much.
problem.
Anything else you want to say about a takeaway message?
I guess it's also to say that the situation depicted within the film is not far from what we're living in right now, and
Mm,
that yeah, the revolution is already on, and you should get fighting it,
that's
in a
right.
sense, and have
Yeah.
these conversations, and also analyze exactly why I guess the revolutionary left wing movement
Mm,
is not problematic, but has its problems,
yeah.
in its bureaucracy and struggle in unification
Mm.
and
Maybe even its fear of its own, like the impact of the multifaceted kind of intersectional nature of left-wing messages means that
yeah,
they always become watered down as a consequence. An idea of
yeah,
sort of recognizing that things are not clear cut. In that was like right-wing
mm,
messages often very black and white, left-wing messaging is often very grey, but it needs to
mm,
be not weakened for that,
yeah.
I suppose, finding
And
ways to
also,
do
I
that.
guess like the same way I think we kind of struggled to know what the French 75 were fighting for
Yeah.
specifically is to like have a clear vision of like
Mm,
the future that you're
mm.
looking to create and to,
Yeah.
I don't know, reconstruct.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's right.
there you go.
Yeah. So in this analogy, obviously, Marsha is Willa because you're the one who'll be like going out and
Does
protesting
that
and doing
make
things
you
like
Bob?
that. I am Bob. I am sitting at
Oh.
home in my dressing gown. thinking about
Oh.
how the youth
Got
of
to give yourself
today
a bit
are.
more credit than the
Oh,
sort of
yeah,
like
that's true.
pothead on the sofa.
That's true. Yeah, no, that's right. No, that's me. I would be the one falling off the roof. So true. So yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, great choice there. We will be back in some weeks, which may be 2 or 3, depending on everything. Uh, things like Marsha having actually a degree to finish, and me having taken on the very slow painting of my bathroom. All of these things have got in
Mm.
the way. But we will be back with Begonia, another nice recent one, followed probably by Frankenstein, Lord of the Flies, and Never Let Me Go. That's what we have in mind. You can get ahead on your watching and reading variously for those. Uh, Keep up with everything that we're doing. You never know. We may well even release a Substack at some point. At the moment,
Yeah,
if you do follow our
at
Substack,
some
it
point.
will at very minimum, it will tell you when we've released a new podcast episode. There might even be more other content, aforesaid distractions permitting. We also have an Instagram account. We have a Blue Sky account. We have a website where you can buy lovely merch. And we always love to hear from people. So, email us or send us a DM or whatever and let us know what you thought about today
Yeah.
and anything you'd
Let
like
us
us to do
know.
in the future. Yeah,
Yeah, well, we should watch or read next.
indeed. Well, thank you very much, Marsha.
Thank you very much, Claire.
And goodbye, lovely listeners.
Bye bye.